Hi guys, Ed Tobin. I'm with the Next Wave Business Services company and Tobin Insurance Group. So I do payroll administration, human resources, the back office for lots of small companies. Make sure that they stay within regulation, and then I handle all the insurances through Tobin Insurance Group to keep them compliant in anything that they need in that respect as well. So. Nice to see you this morning.
Thank you. All right, Michael Matthews.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is Michael Matthews. I own the Michael Matthews Agency with Farmers Insurance. I'm over on Power Road, just north of Main Street. I've been there going on 6 years this July. Very interested in this this format and this group. Very interested in retail in Mesa and growth and all that information. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Hi, Stephanie.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephanie Siebold, and I'm with Red Local Digital Marketing. In a nutshell, what we do is help businesses be found and chosen online for the products and services they are offering. So I'm excited to be here and meet everybody and be a resource for anybody that needs it.
Perfect. All right, Shauna. Can you hear us, Shauna?
Good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm getting my kids ready for school. That's why I can't be on camera, but I'll plan better for next month. But my name's Shauna. I am with 3ME Design, so full service interior decorating and design. This is my first meeting. Excited to be here, and I have an office in downtown Mesa at the expansive Newberry workspace.
Where is that located?
It's in downtown Mesa on Main Street.
Okay, like over by the grid or like closer to.
It is by the Natural History Museum.
Oh, cool.
I don't know where the grid is, so that's the only landmark I can think of off the top of my head.
No, you're fine. Thank you. Yeah, I haven't been down there. I like to visit the co-working spaces. They're usually pretty fun environments.
Yeah, it's nice. You should definitely check it out.
Well, I have something to share real quick. I was just emailed this from Bob, and it's from Maribeth Smith. She is the administrative assistant to Jay O'Donnell, City of Mesa, and it's a retail survey. Wow. And I'll just read it here, and then I'll send you guys the link. It says, as Mesa has grown both in population and income, there has been an increasing need to grow the same high quality in the city's retail and restaurant establishments. The Office of Economic Development has been working to develop a strategy for increasing and elevating the quality of retailers in the city. And as part of this, feedback from residents and employees in Mesa is crucial. We ask that you share the link to our retail survey with your colleagues and neighbors and encourage their input on what types of retailers and restaurants they would like to see in Mesa. The survey will remain open until April 30th. So like I said, I'll send that to you guys after the meeting today. All right, well, if we don't have anything else, and Brent's got the floor.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm excited to be able to present a little bit today. I do have a little bit more material, but we will keep it loose. I prefer as much as possible to make this a dialogue. So if at any time you have questions, feel free to stop me, and we can talk about it. You know, given that we have kind of like a small group, we can make this more of a conversation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We'll start talking. I'll introduce myself a little bit. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so drawing lines, you see that? So my my name is Brint Hiatt. I'm an attorney with Hiatt Law. I'm the owner of Hiatt Law. We are a small law firm located here in downtown Mesa. I've been a member of the chamber for a few years now, but I haven't been able to get as involved as I'd like to be and as I'm starting to become. So I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you and get to know a little bit more about your business, find creative ways that we're able to work together. And so when Trish was talking about needing some just different topics to be able to I guess, enrich the lives of the constituents of the F.o.R.M group. You know, my understanding is that a lot of this group, they're made up of business owners or people who focus on small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so I wanted to give some simple legal strategies to help you know when it's time to make a change for your business or your life. So going in a little bit, first off, obviously just a quick disclaimer. I know this is not quick, it's long, but just understand that this is educational purposes only. Obviously, if you have like a specific need or question or concern, you're not able to really rely on this. These are broad general strategies. And if you need any specific guidance or advice, then you should obviously seek an attorney to provide that specific personalized advice for you. A little bit about my firm. We've been around for a while now. We are located in downtown Mesa, just across from the library at Mesa City Center, just around the corner from the Chamber of Commerce. And again, our focus is on small businesses and entrepreneurs. There's our contact information if anyone would like to get a hold of us. A little bit about, still more about the firm. We help entrepreneurs, small business owners set up their business with a solid foundation, legally protecting what you're working so hard to build. We provide you with legal strategies that work for your business, your life, so you spend less time stressing about the boogeyman, what might be out to get you, more time actually building your business, building your dreams. What makes us unique is our attorneys have actual business and startup experience. So we understand what you're going through as a business owner, the difficult choices you have to make. I like to joke that I myself have never had a real job, because even back in high school, rather than you know, get a job at a, you know, like the normal grocery stores or whatever other people were doing, I actually started a company, a landscaping business, and so I've been involved with entrepreneurs and small businesses from a very young age. A little bit about me. I have my JD from the University of Hawaii, an MBA from there also. I went to Duke and got a Master of Laws in entrepreneurship, basically venture capital and yeah, basically venture-backed companies, but from the point of view of the entrepreneur, so advising the small business owner on what they need to do, and the type of choices they're going to have to make. So I did get my undergrad here at Arizona State. I'm licensed in Arizona and Hawaii still, speak multiple languages, and then also, yeah, 15 plus year serial entrepreneur. But most important of all, the most important thing to know about me is I am you know, everything that I do is for my family and what we do, and I want hopefully everybody to know that as we go through whatever conversation that we have, that this is the reason for most of us doing the businesses that we do, is to protect the people that we care about. And so I'm very much no different than that. I have 2 sets of twins. Some of these pictures are a little bit outdated. Some of these little faces are a little bit bigger and less chubby than they are in these pictures, but my wife, we just took family photos, so I haven't had a chance to get these updated, but I will soon. So now getting into the content, drawing lines for ourselves in business and life. You know, some of the questions that we're going to discover that we're going to go over here is like, what is the relationship between control and flexibility and protection for me and my business? I get asked a lot, for example, like, how do I get asset protection for my business? How do I stop myself from being sued by creditors? When is the right time to do something? When is the right time to talk to an attorney, or when can I do it myself, right? These are all very important questions for people to know, because do you need to talk to an attorney for every single little thing? Absolutely not. And I tell you what, I know almost every single lawyer joke there is out there. So I know how lawyers are perceived. and to some degree, I even kind of share some of those feelings, because I've had to hire attorneys too, and it's not very fun. And what's interesting, and you might be surprised to hear this, but most people don't like paying attorneys. You know, like it's kind of a surprise. I was shocked when I went into the law that people actually don't like hiring attorneys. But in all reality and in all seriousness, you know, attorneys they can be, if you choose the right one, they can be a trusted advisor. And so one of the things that I like to do is I like to use principles and strategies in doing my planning. So, for example, let's start with the first one: the relationship between flexibility and control versus asset protection. Now, you can have it's basically who recognizes this, right? This is pretty much like every kid recognizes this. This is pretty much just a teeter-totter. Everybody's seeing this, right? Hopefully it's big enough. On one side of the teeter-totter, you have flexibility and control. On the other side, you have asset protection. Okay. you can literally walk outside and start doing business, naked to the world, naked to any, predator threats that might come at you. And so but you have 100% flexibility and control. And so when you think about this and compare this relationship, it really is an inverse relationship. The more flexibility and control that you require to have in your life, oftentimes the less amount of asset protection. And if you need to have more asset protection, a lot of times you have less flexibility and control. Just a common example of that would be just setting up a business. You can go out and do business as a sole proprietor. And how many of you guys have heard that sole proprietorships can be an appropriate way to do business? Some of us have heard that. I don't generally believe in that one, but as far as doing a sole proprietorship, anytime you're going to have business risk, that there's the risk of you being sued, at some point you may want to start looking at giving up some of that flexibility and control in order to achieve some more asset protection. For example, setting up an LLC for you to do business under, rather than doing business as you yourself, again, naked to the world, absolutely zero protection whatsoever. So as much as possible, we try to keep it simple until complexity is justified. And so when are you going to want to try to make a move that is going to add complexity to your life? An example of complexity might be filing for an LLC and starting to do business under the corporate form, the company form of an LLC or a corporation. Maybe filing, electing a new tax status, a new taxation method that you're going to be filing with the IRS. That means you're going to have to jump through hoops in order to be able to take advantage of those benefits, right? Or signing a contract and making sure that the contract has the right allocation of risk involved and what types of negotiation you may want to be able to put in place. So I came up with pretty much two broad reasons why you would ever want to justify complexity. And one is that the money just justifies the increased cost. You're saving more money in taxes, or you are going after a new opportunity that is going to make you more money, and therefore it justifies the increased cost. The other reason is that the risk of loss is just too big, to ever justify not adding the complexity. Like, for example, if you have the potential to be sued and you have the way, using the same examples before, and you have a way to essentially put a limitation of liability shield between you and your potential creditors, and the risk is, higher than, a few dollars, I think it absolutely makes sense to complexify, if I can make up a word here, your life a bit by adding a corporate form and making sure that you're maintaining that entity, doing the steps, taking the steps to make sure that the entity is maintained and you don't lose that limitation of liability. In other words, make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. So if you're going to be making more money, or the risk of loss and the amount of money that you might lose is greater than the amount of money you might spend on setting up an entity, obviously attorney fees, insurance, tax advising, all of these things that would need to go into making sure that you are as bulletproof as possible. Now, there's no true way to make yourself like truly bulletproof, like a force shield of invulnerability. But we can run plays. We can block and tackle, and so as much as possible, you can run the play and get the juice and make sure that the juice is worth that squeeze. So, as an example, I'm giving you just kind of like a quick scenario. We have Dream Rentals LLC. I like to use real estate if we can, just because real estate is kind of a national export in the state of Arizona. Everybody knows. And say you own like 3 rental properties, and one is rented out to a grad student family, obviously nice, quiet. One is maybe rented out to a young couple, doesn't seem to cause many problems. One is a frat house. I think you probably know where I'm going with this, what might be coming in the next slide. And so things happen, right? The frat house, they throw a kegger, accidents happen, lawsuits happen, and police are called, right? The lawsuit here puts all 3 of the properties at risk of loss if they are all inside of this Dream Rentals LLC. If they're all inside one LLC, and this is a fairly simple structure, an LLC that can hold multiple properties. Now, if you have all of the entities in the same property and say each one is cash flowing a certain amount, and if each one is cash flowing a certain amount, but they're all under the same LLC, and then you have one of those houses causes a problem, the assets and the cash flow from all of the other assets inside of that LLC are all at risk. And so what to do, right? What would be the next thing that you should think about doing, which would be a relatively simple thing, is if we were to have, I mean, you could still have Dream Rentals LLC as like a parent company, but it would own DR1, DR2, DR3. The same thing happens, but if all of the entities own their own property and there is a separation and you're treating each one like a business. And by treating each one like a business, taking it seriously, you're maintaining separate bank accounts, you're filing taxes, you're keeping the records, you are signing in the appropriate capacity, then the assets in these separate LLCs are kept safe from the liabilities and risk posed by the other. Now, this one might burn down, right? The frat house might burn down and you might have to cut your losses. But if you don't have, if you at least have this separation of the entities so that you are keeping the liability from bleeding over into the rest of your life, then I think that's still a good outcome, because you can at least cut your losses, continue to grow your assets, and be reasonably certain and safe that you know that the limitation of liability company shield, the limitation of liability, whether it's a corporation or LLC or limited partnership, that limitation of liability shield is going to protect you from creditors coming after your personal assets. Okay. As another strategy for creating as much bulletproofing of your life, I like to consider it putting on your armor, the 3 layers of protection. So in order to do true asset protection, now you got to be careful. In Arizona, we do have a fraudulent transfer statute, and so if you're just hiding the ball, hiding your assets, so creditors can't find them, can't get to them, that could actually be penalized up to the level of a felony. So you got to be careful about that. But that does not mean that you cannot still put in plays. And so this is another play for your playbook. So let's talk about the first one. First one is just, you need to make sure that you have the appropriate legal structures. These could be your LLCs, corporations, nonprofits, LPs, your trusts, and also your contracts. Contracts are a legal structure. They are a negotiation. They are the minimum rules of the relationship, the minimum standard that the parties will be able to act according to if you're ever coming up with a problem. And just so you know too, like, it's the minimum standard. If you're doing well or you're getting along well, you can always amend. You can always come up with a better deal. You can always renegotiate, okay? It's when things you get into trouble that you're going to want to rely on these legal structures, and you're going to be glad that you have treated it and taken it seriously and treated it like its own entity. So that's the legal structures, and you want to make sure that all of your business risk is tied to those legal structures. If you're doing a contract, you make sure that you're not assigning your own capacity, that it is being tied to the appropriate business. I'm sure many people, some of you that might even be on this or seeing this, whether it's now or later, you probably have multiple entities. And so making sure that the appropriate entity is obligated, rather than just kind of blanket signing and hoping that the judge is going to see it your way, is no way to do business. That's a way to have the corporate veil pierced. So the next level, so anyway, make sure all liabilities are attached to the correct structure. The next level is insurance. And I know we've talked a little bit about insurance here, but these are just some ideas. They're not all of the insurances out here. Please talk to an appropriate advisor who can give you good advice here. But as long as you have the liability attached to the right entity, the next level of protection is insurance. That's what it's here for. Like, it's part of the part of the economy, part of the ecosystem in our business marketplace to help us insulate, and so that the parties involved in a transaction can basically cover their own costs rather than having those costs be foisted upon society in general. So the type of insurance that you're going to need to protect yourself is going to vary depending on the type of business that you do, the amount of business that you do, and all of these insurances are very relevant to your business and to your life. Obviously, if you have premises, you're going to want you're going to want property insurance. You probably will want an errors and omissions or a malpractice type of policy. Directors and officers. If you have investors in your business, you're absolutely going to want directors and officers insurance, workers' compensation. If you're doing anything online, you're going to want to look at making sure you have cyber liability coverage. If you have partners, a very, very good idea is to have buy-sell insurance. You can actually fund a deal with insurance. Insurances are, and I'm not going to get into like the intricacies of them because I'm not an insurance broker. I do sell a lot of insurance because it's just that important. You know, it is very, very important that you have a good insurance advisor who can take you through the ins and outs of your policy, make sure that it's going to fit your business. Now, it's a sliding scale, right? Make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. Don't go out and buy a $10 million policy before you've gotten your first customer. But make sure that you are getting the appropriate insurance and understand too, like your contracts. Insurance is a creature of contract, right? It's a contract you sign, and they're obligated to fulfill the terms and conditions of their contract. Contracts, if you think about it, and I showed you pictures of my family just a few moments ago, but that's really what a contract can be compared to in all reality is a snapshot. It's a snapshot of a picture of a relationship written down in Word format, if you think about it. And relationships change, they grow and develop over time. And as you have your partners in your relationships, sometimes those relationships need to be redefined from time to time. So you'll want to come back to this insurance policy every so often and make sure that you have the right amount of coverage, the right type of coverage. And if your business is expanded, making sure that you have things done the right way. You've moved locations, making sure that you have the right additional insured added on your certificate of insurance. If you have, you've added a board of directors, making sure you have D&O policies. Again, I'm not saying that you need all of these insurances from day one. In fact, I can almost guarantee you do not need all of these insurances from day one, but understand that business takes on a life of its own, and there are inflection points where you are going to want to take a look at these policies and make sure that you have adequate coverage.
Hey, Brent, can I chime in for a
Around.
quick second? Because
Sure.
you're making some great points here. I'll
Okay.
give you a very simple example. You have buy sell there where people will use like a life insurance policy
Mhm.
in case one of the partners passes away to buy
Yes.
and sell so that their significant other gets
Yeah.
compensated for
Mhm.
that kind of situation. Which really what I see a lot when people are buying those life insurance policies is they don't put a contract in place with that life insurance.
Which can cause it to fail if the parties if they want to renege.
Exactly. And those
Absolutely.
people think, hey, we got key man insurance, everything's great. And I'm like, well, did you get a contract? Did you put something together? And so I'm really excited about having to meet you today because that's something that I see on a regular basis with people that are partners. Hey,
Mhm.
do I want to be a partner with with my partner's wife, or don't I? Do we
Yeah.
want to have this buy-sell agreement so that if something happens to you, then I run the thing and we compensate her there? But anyway, this is awesome. This program that you're saying. So I just wanted to chime in and say, lots of times when you're buying insurance, you have to have that contract and you have to add things to this to make these things actually feasible and work the way you want them to work.
Yeah. And you've probably heard this before, maybe from an insurance broker, whoever's listening too, is that better to have it not needed than need to not have it, right? I mean, that's kind of important. As a quick aside, I have a client that I'm working with. There was a death among one of the partners, and now you have and I think I'm going to get to it a little bit later, but now you have a grieving spouse who's now in the business, getting in fights with the current partners and arguing that she should basically take over a very sophisticated job that her spouse was doing. And they just never put together this plan. It was always talked about. It was always discussed. They never did it. And so it would have been wonderful to have just had this person be bought out at fair compensation, right?
Mhm.
This person could have just been bought out And the grieving spouse doesn't want to be there either. Like, let's be real, right? So if you put these policies in place, you're going to be very, very grateful that you have them when the time comes. Not just that too, but I will say, going back to the in fact, I'll jump to the next one, but going back to the legal structures, if you don't have insurance and if you don't have a lot else, insurance can be one of the ways that you actually stave off having the corporate veil pierced. So the next part is basically what I call the PSPs, right? The policy, systems, and procedures. Essentially, do it right, do it correctly. If you do it right, no commingling of bank accounts, keeping records, maintaining the entity, training your employees, reviewing the policies, filing your taxes, your manuals and handbooks, you're filing for your trademarks, you're signing contracts correctly. When you're trying to avoid the alter ego or piercing the corporate veil, one of the things courts look for if it was adequately funded. If you just set it up as a shield to basically say, screw you to all creditors coming because you think that that's going to protect you in all situations. I have bad news that it will not protect you in all situations if you do not maintain the entity. And so actually having insurance, for example, is one of the ways that courts have allowed that is considered funding the entity and protecting you from losing your corporate veil, where you have that limitation of liability shield from outside creditors. So in essence, these three layers, having the appropriate legal structure. And, when we get to questions, we can talk about what's right for you, what's right for your partners, and, what type of legal structure, making sure that you're funding it with insurance. Okay. And then making sure that you do it right. So I'm going to go through a quick scenario, because if you do it right, a lawsuit happens, creditor comes knocking. It's very possible, if you've done it correctly, that you may not be at fault. You may not have any liability. Like, you can just basically say, sorry, too bad, so sad. Right? We didn't do anything wrong. It's not our fault. We're sorry that you got hurt or whatever, but this was user error or something, right? If you've done it correctly, then you should not be at fault. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be in all cases, right? I mean, there are situations where you're just going to be liable, right? Slip and fall, product manufacturer liability, etc. So, but if you did it right, but something still happened anyway, insurance, that's what they're there for. They're there to step in and essentially indemnify you from those greatest risks so that you can protect your business and have it continue on going. Okay. I've heard so many stories of people who have been sued where the insurance came in. And to be fair, I mean, it's scary when you get sued, right? It is scary when you get sued. It's not a fun time. A lot of times people will kind of make that about themselves, as if like they lack integrity for some reason, and that's not what it is at all. You get insurance specifically to provide for things like this. So if you have the appropriate insurance, you should still be protected, and it will allow you to continue. Now, you may have increased insurance premiums. That's just kind of the way things go, but inflation is going to happen and costs are going to go up anyway, right? So just understand that that's just part of doing business. And then if all else fails, but at least you have the liability tied to a business legal structure that provides limitation of liability, then at the very least, in this innermost circle, you can kind of compare it to essentially a tourniquet, right? Like snake bite. You want to make sure that the infection does not bleed over and infect the rest of your life, so that any paychecks that you've taken out of the business, put money into a 401k, distributions that you have given yourself as the owner to put into other businesses that you've set up for yourself, that the only part of your life that will be at risk is whatever is still in the business. So make sure that you're paying yourself. Don't leave a ton of cash in there, right? Make sure that you're actually planning for what you're going to do with your business. If you put all of your eggs in this basket, then eventually a couple of the eggs are going to crack. So make sure you're taking them out, and next you need to set up other bullseyes. Okay, whatever you're doing in your business, if you're doing business, if you're taking on business risk, make sure that you are wrapping them in this bullseye protection, so that you are able to avoid creditors. So if this one goes down, again, like, at least it shields yourself and all of the rest of your businesses from from being at risk of having that liability. Okay. So I wanted to go over just a couple of cases. Does anybody have a question about these strategies that I've talked about, these just kind of guiding principles? If anybody has a question about them or a comment, I was going to go into a couple of case studies with time permitting.
Yeah, Brent?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can you just briefly discuss the transition from an LLC to an S corp?
So
Then there's some tax
Yeah.
benefits and stuff like that, but can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So broadly speaking, okay, S corps are very good for what they're good for, and they're terrible for anything else. So just be careful, because there will be advisors who will tell you S corp, S corp, S corp. Okay, it may or may not be for you. Okay, one, again, juice has got to be worth the squeeze. Generally, if you're just starting out in business, you're pretty likely to operate at a loss the first year. Right. I mean, depending on the business. Now, if you're doing sales and you don't have a lot of expenses for your business, maybe that's not true. Maybe that's not the case. You know, very commission driven or something like that, or just a high income type of business where you're not plowing back in. You know, we have, like, for example, like I think professional like Stephanie will tell you, you're going to want to invest in marketing. You're going to want to take that money, plow it back in into your business and grow your revenues as much as possible. So if that's the case and you're operating at a loss, chances are having an S corporation election may not be the right thing that first year. Okay, but what an S corporation election is, subchapter S is just a chapter of the Internal Revenue Code, and it allows you to tax your business as a flow-through entity and save on self-employment taxes. So now understand too, like, I'm not a tax attorney, I'm not a CPA, so getting specific advice about your tax situation, please consult a tax advisor. But generally speaking, when you take W-2 income, there's going to be some withholdings that are going to be taken out, FICA, etc. It's roughly 7.5% of a W-2 paycheck. Now, the employer has to match it. So if you're getting a W-2 paycheck, understand that the employer is not just paying your salary, they're paying taxes on top of you in order to be able to, to comply with the payroll taxes, okay? If you are self-employed, it is your own business, you must match it on your own. So in an easy scenario, and you make $100,000, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. You make $100,000 in a year taxable income. Technically, that's a roughly $15,000 of self-employment taxes that you'd have to take. If you were to be taxed as an S corporation, and the fun thing about LLCs is they're very flexible vehicles. So going back to that asset protection and flexibility inverse relationship, the LLC is a pretty good compromise in a lot of ways, where you have a lot of the protection of a corporation, almost all of the protection of a corporation, and still a lot of flexibility to run the business. Like Arizona's LLC law, for example, you don't have to have annual meetings. You should. I strongly recommend it, because the more you show it's like a business, the less trouble you're going to get into in the future. But there's a lot of flexibility and leeway that the Arizona statute provides to you. So an LLC, one of the flexibilities is you can elect, by filing a form with the IRS, to be taxed as either a partnership or as a corporation. And so when you get taxed as a corporation, you can elect to choose S chapter. So an S corporation taxation. It's just filing the appropriate forms with the IRS, making sure you do it in a timely manner, okay, that you do it on time, and then that you actually submit your payroll. So you actually are submitting the payroll taxes, your W-2 taxes. So in that scenario, if you made $100,000 in a year, and say you paid yourself reasonable compensation, I'm going to say $40,000 is like W-2 payroll. Again, consult your tax advisor. I'm not giving you the number, but you would pay payroll taxes 15% on that $40,000 of W-2 income. So instead of $15,000 of taxes on payroll taxes, you would pay 15% of $40,000, which would be what, $6,000 roughly, give or take, of payroll taxes, and then the remainder of that tax. So you basically save $9,000 in taxes that first year. In fact, a lot of business owners, it seems like they kind of save in that $10,000 range their first year. And the reason is because it's usually, the juice is not usually worth the squeeze until you're hitting $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of taxable income. Again, your situation, I don't know what it is, so don't take that as actual legal advice or tax advice. But what I have found is that it needs to be on your radar once you're making around like 60 to 80,000. An S election really should be on your radar if it fits your business model. If you have partners or you're taking on investors, it's usually not going to work. Okay. An alternative structure might be that you have like a partnership and you each have your own personal entities, and you might form like a joint entity together owned by each of your personal entities that are taxed as an S corporation, just because S corporations are touchy. Okay. You can only have, it's not very flexible. Okay. So it would take a lot of the flexibility of an LLC and turn it inflexible. So, making sure that you're treating each of the partners common control. You can have only a limited number of members. I think non-resident, foreign, non-citizens are not allowed. You can't have entity ownership, so you couldn't have the LLC be owned by, have any ownership by another LLC or corporation. So there's just some limitations that you can do with an S corp. I generally find that like smaller, closely held businesses, like families, personal entities, those tend to make great candidates to be S corporations. But like high growth, venture backed, investor backed companies generally do not, where you need to have like preferential payback or things like that. You're going to be adding a lot of complexity where the juice may not be worth the squeeze. So just be aware of that. There's other ways that you can also save on self-employment taxes depending on the type of business activity that you do. And so S corporations are great for what they're great for, but they're terrible for everything else. So
Perfect. Thank you.
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions?
So Brent, when you're talking about that, when you're an S corporation and you're paying payroll and you're paying payroll taxes, that
Right.
also means that you're giving money to state unemployment, federal unemployment, as well as Social Security.
Mhm.
So people that don't go that routine and don't pay themselves any kind of a salary, and people have had these entities that they don't do that maybe forever. They could do that for 25, 30 years. At retirement time, there's no Social Security benefit for them for income.
Right.
You'll be eligible for Medicare at 65, but you might not be eligible for Social Security. So there's lots of things that go into playing for that. But you make some great points that hey, if you're an S corp and you're paying yourself a salary, you as the employer is paying taxes, and you as the employee are paying taxes. So you're basically double taxing yourself almost.
Yeah.
But that's how it is if you're an S corporation. You got to make that choice if it makes sense or not.
And you're highlighting the exact point, right? Like this should not be done in a vacuum. I would not try to DIY this. This is where good advice from good advisors is very, very important. This is not what I do. So if you want to like figure out how much to withhold or how much to pay or what that's going to do for you, right? You're going to want to make sure you have a competent financial advisor, tax advisor, insurance advisor, making sure that these things are all discussed, because a lot of this is a calculator exercise. And I mean, other than the joke about the attorneys and billable hours, we're not that great at math. So if you want to figure out what's going to be the optimal amount to do the withholdings for, that's not usually going to be an attorney to help you out with, unless it's like one of those attorney CPA shops, and then they might be able to take a better stab at it. So, but yeah, great comments. Thank you. Great question.
So another mention is, as an LLC and or an S corporation, you can still file for a federal employee identification number.
Oh yeah,
either
absolutely.
one of those statuses.
You have to. You use the same EIN. It's you get an EIN for the LLC, and so I suppose I should just clarify too. If you are a single member LLC, okay, this is as close to maximum flexibility as you can get without being completely naked to the world, right? A single member LLC is considered a disregarded entity to the IRS. So what that means essentially is that they basically treat you like a sole proprietor. It's not even required. The entity is not required to file a tax return. Your income or your losses will roll up on your Schedule C on your 1040 and your personal return. And so that's why, going back to, for example, let me go back here. Going back to the Dream Rental LLC, right? That's why when you have Dream Rentals LLC, and we get back to this part here, if you have a parent company and these are all owned 100% by a parent entity, none of these entities are going to have to file federal tax returns. Okay. Now there probably will be like Arizona TPT and things like that. But again, talk to your bookkeeper, talk to your payroll provider, talk to your, well, not payroll, but talk to your, well, actually, yeah, payroll probably too. If you're reporting rental income, right? Like make sure that you are talking to the appropriate advisor. But these are single member entities, and so they all roll up onto Dream Rentals, or if you own them singly, by yourself, like Trish, if you own all of these entities in your own name, they would just all roll up on your personal return. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a disregarded entity. And so that's, again, the big flexibility of the LLC is you can be taxed as a sole proprietor, which is basically nothing. It just rolls up on your personal return. You can be taxed as a partnership if you have multiple members. If you're a husband and wife, or if you're legally married in Arizona, Arizona being a community property state, that can be, you have the choice to elect to have a husband, wife, spousal relationship taxed as a partnership or as a single member. And then you can also elect to be taxed as a corporation, whether S or C corporation. Okay.
Nice.
Cool. Any other questions? So
I could talk to you all day long, Brent, about this stuff.
I'm
because
sure.
I don't have
pretty good.
questions, but I can so totally relate to what you presented today is really important for small businesses to get a taste of this. I'm glad we're recording this so that that people that aren't here will have an opportunity to hear what you had to say today.
Absolutely. I also prepared some case studies. I don't know if we have time to get into them. Just some situations and case studies and what not to do. Some actual like real screw ups that I've been able to see. I don't know if we have time to get into that, but Trish, I think are we getting close to wrapping or
We've got about just under 15 minutes left.
Okay. So I guess it's up to you. Do you want me to go through that, or would you prefer to do more of like a Q&A, continued discussion?
Well, group, what do you think? Do you want to do Q&A or?
I'd like to hear the scenarios.
Okay, let's do the case studies then. Okay, sounds good. Quick. Okay, so back here, and I'm going to jump to case number 1, Paperwork Stinks Inc. So I have a client corporation that began about 5 years ago with 2 co-founders and an investor. They had an original agreement where the co-founders were going to own 50% together. The original investor was going to own the other 50%. They didn't have any contracts. Their legal structure was it just had no foundational work done. Okay, so they did not have that inner circle. They had the corporation set up, but they did not have the important contracts. The business took off. The investor paid in like nearly $1 million to fund the company's growth, but the company needs to grow, gave away too much equity, and lo and behold, the investor's spouse got really upset with them continuing to invest in what they thought might be a sinking ship, and it caused a lot of marital issues. Good news, there was more interest from more investors, but that initial investor was having problems allowing them to come in with the preferences that they would need. It was causing major marital issues, and nobody wanted to be a marriage counselor for their investor, but this is what was happening. So it's come down to the wire multiple times for funding, causing stress and anxiety, lots of higher costs, high legal costs. They've got employees receiving equity, and is creating like really, really high taxable events because they did not get advisors involved at the time. So this is one of the case studies. How it could have been avoided is if they had also too, these lack of agreements, it translated into other areas of their business. They didn't have appropriate PSPs. They started coming into lawsuit threats. Luckily, they've been able to kind of avoid some of those by just kind of caving into a lot of the demands. But because they did not have their policy systems and procedures, they do have insurance, thank goodness. But they were lacking on their inner circle and their outer circle. It's caused a lot of problems and headache and really stunted their growth. So where they could have avoided this, especially if you got an investor putting in $1 million, like, I mean, come on, you should allocate some money to make sure that, like, hey, let's spend, however much it's going to be, $3,000 to $10,000 to protect the $1 million and protect your business offering, right? So that's one case study. The next one I have is what I call brand. This might go more for those of you that are interested in branding your business and protecting your brand, right? I mean, your business name is one thing, but it doesn't actually give you any legal protection. It might surprise some of you to know that that Burger King is actually not the first Burger King out there. I don't know if any of you have heard this story, but there's actually another Burger King. I think somewhere in the Midwest. I want to say it's Indiana or Illinois, where it was the original Burger King. They are stuck inside of a 20-mile radius. And the franchise Burger King is not allowed to go in, but the first Burger King is not allowed to go out. And what they did was they had obviously the one with the trademark, ended up winning. So as another concept, a business brand, LLC started offering software as a service and bespoke technical services in their community under an intuitive brand name. Now, let me explain what intuitive is. So when you're doing trademarks, there's 3 different types of names usually. And it's a spectrum. It's a sliding scale going from really descriptive, like for example, Arizona Registered Nurses LLC. Arizona Registered Nurses, you probably couldn't trademark that. There's very little protection because that's merely descriptive. Fanciful is on the opposite end, where you have something that literally means something completely different than what it sells. Apple doesn't sell fruit, right? Nike is the Greek goddess of victory, has nothing to do with sports apparel or shoes. You have completely fanciful names that you might have heard of. I think, something like, but intuitive is somewhere in the middle. In fact, we have Stephanie, yours is Rev Local, right? That would be somewhat more intuitive, right? Because it's the idea that you're going to rev up your business, you're going to rev up your local search, and so it's somewhat more intuitive, but it's not exactly descriptive, and so there's a little bit more. There's more protection there than something that's merely descriptive. Does that make sense? So after years of impressive growth, this was an established. And by the way, this is one I've seen dozens of times. This isn't like any one business. This is just something I've seen a lot. Brand was an established part of the community, applied to register for the trademark as part of their expansion plan. But they found out that there was another company, not Brand, but Brand, that was already out there, and they had already registered their mark, just like that Burger King situation. They registered their mark in 2021 immediately after they started offering their services. And so now Brand is stuck with a very difficult, a very, very difficult choice, right? They can either rebrand, which is usually what ends up happening. Like they spend like, I've been told by marketing professionals that it's anywhere from like $50,000 to $200,000 to establish a brand. Just doing a branding exercise with a branding professional to come up with names, logos, etc. That's usually like a $10,000 to $25,000 exercise. And I find it to be kind of almost criminal malpractice when people don't include like just a straight up Google search or trademark search as part of that practice, because they get so enamored of the name. I had a client recently who, he claims a potential client, I didn't take them on, but he claims that he did not know that he squatted on somebody else's name that had been around for 20 years. And then he was shocked when he got a cease and desist letter. But I looked at the marks that he had. I'm like, it's exactly like this competitor. They do exactly the same thing in the exact same space, almost the exact same name, and a very similar, logo. And he wanted to register a trademark. And then this 20-plus-year-old company started coming after him because in the United States, you get common law rights to the name as well. So you could actually, if you have earlier rights, you potentially could initiate cancellation proceedings. So, but it's a very expensive process. So rebranding is usually what happens, and depending on the type of business that it is, you might be able to work out a coexist agreement. Like maybe one does, it's consulting and education software, for example, so it's not an identical industry, so maybe they could coexist. But either way, better safe than sorry. Better to have it not needed than needed not have it. Do a Google search. Google's your friend. Go to the USPTO.gov and check out the trademark searches. Now, by having an attorney help you, we actually do a comprehensive look at the marks that are out there to see what's there. And see what might be in the way, so that you're not like stuck completely flat-footed when it comes. And that way you at least know the risks when you're going to take them.
Mhm.
So the last one is the sinking partnership LLC. You've heard that phrase. That's maybe a little tongue in cheek, that the only ship that won't float is the partnership, right? So I'm not saying that partnerships can't work, but you have to begin with the end in mind. In fact, I'm gonna take an aside really quick here. And a lot of people, if you come in and have a consultation with us, you'll hear us say quite a bit that we like to stimulate conflict at the beginning of a business. Okay, and I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but if you're coming in with your co-founders, your partners, we want to stimulate conflict. It's important for you to know what's important to the other person, what is going to make that person tick and get a little bit emotional. So you need to understand, what is important to that person before the risks are completely high, so high, the stakes are so high that you can't afford to lose. You don't want to have, don't want to find out, when you're being sued for $1 million, or when there's millions of dollars at stake, that you really just hate the way that you fight. You need to stimulate some healthy conflict at the outset of your business, so that you can design the partnership agreement, the operating agreement, the shareholder agreement that will allow you to coexist. Remember, these are the minimum rules of the relationship, the minimum standards that the partners are going to operate and abide by. And if you can agree to these things at the outset, you will have dodged a massive bullet. If you can figure this out at the outset. So here's an example: patent issues in 2015, and the Sinking Partnership LLC was formed to exploit the technology. 3 partners, no operating agreement, though, to detail how the business should be run. Stuff happens. One of the partners gets divorced. Now, all 3 of these members are working members. Okay, they divided up the work about a third. But he loses his membership in the divorce, replaced by an ex-spouse who is not particularly cooperative, still wants to get paid, but not cooperative, right? So now you have 2 partners left, and now they're shouldering 50% of the work, but they still have 3 people that want to eat. And in the absence of an operating agreement, that's just kind of the breaks. If you don't have an operating agreement, the state of Arizona has one for you, the Limited Liability Company Act. So you have employees that come on board, they're gonna have some tax impact and dilution. Partner later dies, the grieving spouse has been difficult to work with. They could have just avoided most of this with a properly drafted operating agreement, buy-sell agreement funded with life insurance. And so a few of these case studies of people not taking this into account, hopefully, as you have gone through this, listened to this, whether you're looking through this in the future, that you will start to think of some things, and you'll come to realize that there's some moments that you may need to talk to an advisor. We would love to take your questions, and would love to be able to work with you in the future, find creative ways to work together. If you know anybody who would like to have a conversation about this, we would love to meet them. And any other questions or concerns, comments, emotional outbursts, take them all. So
Emotional outburst.
Hey, Brent, I would say one other thing that you touched on right there that is so critically important, and that's the management agreement for the corporation, and how because you could have one person of a 3 owner group that's the management company, and they could control the entire thing because the other 2 people are silent partners, or they might not realize that the management, if they didn't read the management agreement properly, that one of the partners is making all the decisions because the management agreement is that way. So that is just such a huge, important part of any kind of a company structure when you have a couple of people that are working in the company for you.
You bring up a good point. So I get a lot of people who ask me, hey, is this a good document? I downloaded it from the internet, or I got it from a buddy of mine. It was a similar agreement that they had. And like, is this a good document? Is this legal? And almost all of the times, if they ask me if it's legal, the answer is yes. Yeah, it's a good document. I'm sure it's fine. The question is does it do what you want it to do?
Right.
Right. So that's really the biggest question. You know, if one person is going to be managing, controlling, that's not good or bad, but you need to know that that's the case so that you can go into this business, that go into this opportunity with your eyes wide open. Attorneys don't make decisions for you, for all that people think that they do. All we really do in this scenario is we identify risks and potential strategies, and then you make the decisions. And so hopefully, you know, we'll be able to engage in some conversation. We would love to be trusted advisors, as there's some great trusted advisors here on the call on this presentation. So again, yeah, thank you for having us. I think we're Trish, you want to take it away?
Yeah, actually, thank you for the presentation. We are wrapping it up now. If anyone else has any questions or has anything to discuss in a 30-second time frame.
I just want to thank you, Brent. Very informative. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
How
Yeah,
do we get in touch with you? Just reach out to you via email.
Yeah. Let me,
yeah.
I'll put that back up on the screen. Here's my contact information. You can also just reach out to hello if you can't remember my name. And we are members of the chamber, so please come call in, come visit our office. Great to meet you all.
thank
All
you.
right, thanks,
Bye,
guys.
Stephanie.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.